On December the 17th, 2025, the second season of the Fallout TV show will air. This video will serve both as a recap of the events of last season, but also give some key details about the games that the series is set within. I'm not going to discuss any trailers for the second season, as these are always subject to change. I will not go on to list every reference, as while these references are kind of fun to notice, they aren't actually that important for understanding both the setting and tone of the Fallout world. However, there'll be a lot of discussion of factions, characters, settings, and even themes that are explored throughout the games. Of course, this will thoroughly spoil the events of these games, but hopefully this will give you a much richer experience when you watch the show at home.
War never changes.
While I could write a very concise explanation of the Fallout universe, but I think Fallout, as in Fallout 1, gives a very concise introduction to the state of affairs in this world.
Battered Germany into an economic superpower. But war never changes. In the 21st century, war was still waged over the resources that could be acquired. Only this time, the spoils of war were also its weapons: petroleum and uranium. For these resources, China would invade Alaska, the US would annex Canada, and the European Commonwealth would dissolve into quarreling, bickering nation-states bent on controlling the last remaining resources on Earth. In 2077, the storm of World War had come again. In 2 brief hours, most of the planet was reduced to cinders. And from the ashes of nuclear devastation, a new civilization would struggle to arise. A few were able to reach the relative safety of the large underground vaults. Your family was part of that group that entered Vault 13. Imprisoned safely behind the large vault door, under a mountain of stone, a generation has lived without knowledge of the outside world. Life in the vault is about to change.
It's a world of nuclear destruction. It's in the name, Fallout. The world that these games and TV series take place in is one of post-nuclear apocalypse. The end of the world has come and we are seeing what comes after it. Sticking to the pre-established facts, we know that the bombs dropped in 2077 and this engulfed the world in hellfire, and since then the world looks very different. But this world was already very divergent from ours even before the bombs fell, with no specifics given to when the world truly differed from our own. These differences can be seen through the technologies and cultural landscapes both pre and post 2077. The way I like to best understand this world of Fallout is it's the optimistic, futuristic beliefs of the 1950s that not only never dissipated but actually somewhat came to pass. The discovery of the atom was able to create a world of robots, flying cars and comfortable living, at least for many, and all these technologies and designs take on a very 1950s Americana aesthetic, mixed with that old sci-fi feel that was prevalent at the time and stemmed back from authors such as H.G. Wells, known for the book War of the Worlds. In some ways, that optimistic future came to pass, but in the world of Fallout, this didn't come without some problems of that era either. The vicious drive for resources and influence, the establishment of big corporations, and the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about. The first season of Fallout starts with the end. We are introduced to Cooper Howard and his daughter as they attend a birthday party, but he is there as entertainment. He's a former cowboy film star that is now entertaining children by recreating his roles. We get to experience that retro futuristic style and that 50s aesthetic in full force, with the atomic cooked food, Monroe haircuts, and even a Mr. Handy robot voiced by the brilliant Matt Berry. Cooper isn't just any old star, but also Vault Boy himself. Vault Boy being a mascot for Vault-Tec in-game and a mascot for Fallout as a series out of it. A classic cartoon-style character that inhibits the values of the time but also the threat of atomic annihilation, summed up with his classic thumbs-up pose that is simultaneously the epitome of 50s America optimism and a way to judge the proximity of an atomic blast. Cooper was the man who played Vault Boy in the adverts, and we see he and his little girl flee from the bombs as they drop in California, all to some assumed safety. This world that we have got to know so briefly is now in ruin, and the only place where there is any real resonance of this fervent 50s American fantasy is in the vaults, the safety net for the American people built by Vault-Tec to keep those lucky enough to get a spot alive. Many of the stories of Fallout start out with a vault dweller who must explore the outside world for the first time with no knowledge knowledge of what is out there, as is the case with one of the show's 3 primary antagonists, arguably the most protagonist-y of the protagonists, Lucy McLean of Vault 33. She knows nothing of the outside world and only the history of America until 2077 and life inside the vault. In this early sequence and throughout the series, we are introduced to vault life and the way that life has functioned underground for hundreds of years, as it is now 2096, 219 years after the bombs fell. While we see that many vaults function differently, the main characteristics of a vault is that they are run in a very orderly fashion, with an overseer attributing everyone a role and purpose, with the stated goal to reopen the world in the future and re-inhabit it. As a bit of a side note, it's quite interesting how arguably communist this structure tends to be. There's often vast amounts of indoctrinating that goes on in a vault, though this is arguably necessary, with the survival of all depending on everyone buying into serving their community. We learn that Lucy is very much an ideal version of a vault resident, and that they are positive, kind, resourceful, but also very much indoctrinated into believing that they must do what is best for everyone, as she is willing to marry another vault dweller without ever meeting them, as they have been deemed a match. We are also introduced to Hank, her father, who seems to display these very notions that have been fostered in Lucy, which is good as he is the overseer of the vault. This is unlike Lucy's brother, Norm, who's very much more cynical of everything. The two seem to have a strong but quite healthy sibling rivalry. It's also revealed that their mother passed at a young age. We get to meet other vault denizens that we will mention later when it's more relevant. The vault looks quite small, and realistically we see a quite small number of residents that wouldn't be able to maintain a stable population. However, we can handwave this a tiny bit as the way the Fallout world is, as it's quite heightened in its reality. But there's also something unique to Vault 33, and that is that they are part of a trifecta of smaller vaults that function independently but occasionally interact to marry off their inhabitants in order to keep their gene pool safe. This is why Lucy does not know her future groom. Some things do seem a bit off at the wedding, but it isn't until after the wedding is consummated that it is revealed that the citizens of Vault 32 were not who they were seen to be, but actually raiders from the surface. Lucy realizes this when she scans her now husband with her clunky wrist computer, a Pip-Boy that all Vault members have. Lucy nearly dies but is able to overcome him and heals herself using a stim pack. In the games, these function as instant health items, and while not fully curing her of her issues, Lucy is seen to be instantly much better off by taking one. It shows how the TV series quite well incorporates these video game mechanics. Fighting between the two groups ensues, and we see the explicit bloody nature of the series play out on screen. Lucy arms herself with a tranquilizer gun and looks to help the fight, seeing her brother sneak around the chaos. I believe this not only highlights the differences between the two, it also represents a bit of the role-playing aspects that you have when you're playing through the games, and your ability to either talk, fight, or sneak your way through obstacles. We see Hank kill Lucy's short-lived husband in a brutal fashion, showing a different side of him before they both confronted with the raider leader, who has several hostages and a bomb. Hank is given an ultimatum between the hostages or Lucy, a somewhat horrific moral dilemma that is not uncommon in the Fallout games. Ever since the first game, characters are made aware that their actions have consequences, and their morality is even calculated with a score on a karma meter. I spoke about this in my video on video games and ethics. Hank chooses Lucy and she's locked in a room for her safety. The raider leader notes her similarity to her mother and that the hostages should do what they do best as vault dwellers, and hide. There is often a very negative portrayal of the vaults from those on the surface. We see later that the hostages survived mostly intact, but many died in the fighting. The survivors clean up and they vote on a plan of action, and that is to stay the course. But this frustrates Lucy as she wants to search for her dad. Her brother Norm and her cousin Chet, who is infatuated with her, help her leave for the surface, opening the vault doors, with Norm staying behind as he says he's too chicken, while Chet is sedated to stop him leaving too. We are then taken away from Vault 33 to an airfield, with Maximus taking a beating from other initiates of the Brotherhood of Steel. The Brotherhood of Steel is a faction that has been in every Fallout game, with there being a non-canon game even being named after them. We are introduced to the structure of this chapter of the Brotherhood, with these initiates being trained and hazed in order to carry out the wishes of this militaristic faction. Their mission is to seek out, salvage and recover pre-war technology, keeping it away from all others. Some members train to be knowledgeable scribes that decipher these technologies and aid research, such as this teacher. Others are trained to be part of the military, becoming squires, then knights, maybe even paladins, that protect and enforce the Brotherhood's goals. A giant airship arrives at the base, showing the extent extent of the power the Brotherhood wields and the extensive resources and understanding of this technology that they possess. We see some knights arrive from the airship in power armor, a giant mech suit of sorts that provides the wearer with great strength, power and defense. These suits are synonymous with both Fallout and in-game they're quite synonymous with the Brotherhood of Steel, and mostly are a relic of the pre-war world. They were used by the American military, which the Brotherhood of Steel's founder defected from in the last hours before the bombs fell in 2077. The makeup of the Brotherhood of Steel is reminiscent of Fallout 4, and we can see this in the outfits that they're wearing and the doctrine that is being said. The airship does say Pridwin on it, I believe, but I'm not 100% sure, and this would also be the same one that appears in Fallout 4, set actually on the opposite coast of America. One of the selling points of the Fallout series is its ability to tell your own story and solve things in your own way, with several different possible outcomes. This makes it difficult for future games, as often they have to definitively state what happened in previous games. It is possible to destroy the Pridwin in Fallout 4, though it is likely that that is now a non-canon event in the Fallout storyline. It also means that the Brotherhood of Steel and its more eastern forces are moving back towards California, where their influence had dwindled. The Brotherhood were an isolationist faction to begin with, and while they made up for their numbers with sheer power, they were overtaken in influence by the establishment of a new California Republic, who we will get into later. Expeditions eastward had mixed success, but at home their numbers dwindled when the once positive relationship with the burgeoning government turned sour and clashes became more and more common. The more populous NCR came out the victor. Fallout New Vegas shows how stagnant the West Coast Brotherhood had remained, as they even had to hide from the major factions of the area, being stuck hidden in a vault. However, on the East Coast, the Brotherhood had become much more engaged in the politics of the region. Firstly, this was done as a humanitarian act, but this more engaged and proactive Brotherhood was wrestled back under the control of those who believed in the mission to restrict the dangers of pre-war technologies from everyone. This is not a Brotherhood that hides away from the world, but a powerful actor on the world stage. We see Max experience a flashback of being a young boy in a ruined city, looking in awe at these knights in power armor. Maximus is quite socially awkward. He's an angry young man with only one real friend in the Brotherhood, Dane. Maximus's temper flares when their friend is promoted from an initiate to a squire and is evidently jealous of his friend. Dane wakes to a mangled foot courtesy of a razor blade embedded in their boot, leading many to believe that Maximus is the culprit. Maximus, while awkward and angry, admits he wished it would happen but didn't actually do it. The elder Quintus, who was interrogating him, sees something within him and sends him as a squire in Dane's place. There is a very religious ritual, with Maximus being branded, that shows the cult-like nature of those in these post-war groups before being sent after an Enclave deserter. Episode 1 ends with 3 bounty hunters who are after this very same deserter, though this is likely not a bounty coming from the Brotherhood, who rarely hire outsiders. We can see them tooled up in some funky and recognisable weapons, including a junk jet. There's a touch of Wild West being invoked here. This is for many reasons. First of all, it is foreshadowing the return of Cooper, the Wild West star. But also, the Wild West is a very apt metaphor for the Fallout world, especially in California. In some ways, the Wild West has returned to the West Coast after the bombs had fallen, with vast brutal stretches of land between small outposts and occasional towns. Water is infrequent and sought after, and other people are likely more dangerous than anything else. While there was freedom of action, there's no freedom to thrive, and what little is there is not able to grow as it is constantly fought over. The men are being very cautious as they are going to ask help from a ghoul, one known for their ruthlessness. Ghouls in Fallout are highly irradiated humans that have undergone significant changes in their makeup. They're able to survive in areas deemed to be too radioactive for humans, and their lifespan can extend long beyond normal humans. However, their skin deteriorates and they suffer from overgrowth. They are often associated with zombies for their look, and even more so if they go feral, something these bounty hunters are afraid of. Feral ghouls are ghouls that have succumbed to the degeneration of their brain activities and have become aggressive and dangerous. Though there are cases of feral ghouls being passive, this is not a common occurrence. The hunters believe that if the ghoul attacks the chicken, unable to control its urge to eat, then they will know if it's feral and be able to kill it on the spot. They get to the grave that has an IV drip attached, where this ghoul has been buried alive as some sort of revenge against someone he'd presumably wronged. We get confirmation that this ghoul is Cooper from the opening sequence, told that he has some reason for wanting to take this bounty. However, he doesn't plan on sharing it with these men, killing them with deft ability. The ghoul, as he is known, is seriously skilled as a gunslinger and far removed in tone and attitude from his pre-war self. In the second episode, we get a little introduction to the target that the Brotherhood and the Ghoul are after, the Enclave defector. But what is the Enclave? We can hear a Brotherhood initiate in the last episode questioning the existence of the Enclave altogether, such is the supposed secretive nature of the group. The games do treat them with the same secretive fervour, but playing through them we know that they do exist and that they are quite the force to be reckoned with. Their history stems from before the war, with the ancestors being high-ranking political, economic and military figures that formed an Illuminati-esque group that essentially controlled the US government before the war. They influenced the creation of the vault, and they had great amount of contingency plans for when the bombs fell. With that being the case, the Enclave, though scattered in safe areas throughout the US, generally had the same goal: to establish a new US state from the ashes of the previous world, with them in control of course. One feature of the Enclave is a push for scientific advancements, no matter the cost, and the target, named Dr. Siggy Wilzig, is clearly a researcher looking into a couple of projects, most notably those on dogs, training the companion that bumps into many of the characters in the show. Dogs have been companions to the protagonist of nearly every Fallout, often being referred to as dog meat, that this dog actually gets named later. The scientist evidently has to hide the existence of this Belgian Malinois, most likely due to her being marked for death. We can see the lengths and danger that Siggy goes through just to save this dog, showing his character and the Enclave's are not aligned. This is likely due to the Enclave's ruthless nature. Many of the atrocities that occurred both pre and post-war were committed with the Enclave's influence, one of the most notorious being the experiments with the Forced Evolutionary Virus, FEV, a virus that altered the DNA of those who it came in contact with the hope of creating the perfect human. These experiments were not created without human sacrifice, which the Enclave were happy to oblige in. FEV experiments not only caused the mass mutations of some of the greatest horrors in the wasteland, but also led to the creation of the super mutant, biologically stronger humanoids that created the greatest challenge to humanity. With us seeing very little of the super mutants in the first season of Fallout, I do expect to see more of them in the second season. While in the later games we see them as dumb, stupid monsters, it is worth saying that actually, to begin with, many of the super mutants that we saw were highly intelligent, even beyond the intelligence of normal humans, though this required them to be made in such a specific way. It is interesting to see whether or not that we will see these more intelligent super mutants and their remnants scattered around in this next series. I hope that we don't get the purely dumb, aggressive monsters that they have become since. We only catch glimpses of these mutants in this series. We see a covered super mutant in the Enclave as the researcher escapes. He is escaping after another Enclave member saw him create something that he felt he needed to hide from the Enclave, ending in a fight and alarms going off, with his faithful dog saving him from his fate. He injects the creation into his neck and escapes. After this scene, we see Lucy exploring the surface for the first time in search of her dad. We see the long stretches of desert and the loneliness that are emblematic of the new world. This sense of isolation, loneliness and vast wasteland have waxed and waned in the series, but there's always been somewhat of a tone of one survivor versus the world. We can see that in the inspirations for Fallout and its spiritual predecessor, Wasteland. They have this tone in droves such as Mad Max and the boy and his dog. This also elevates some of the horrific tension that is present throughout the series, and we see that as Lucy explores the desecrated houses. Their atomic style tech is now in disrepair, the world is in ashes, and the remnants of this pre-war optimism create an unnerving juxtaposition, with the apex of this occurring when she comes across a family of corpses still sitting at dinner with a bottle of Vault Tech Plan D suicide pills. You know what happened here. This scene really encapsulates the haunting atmosphere that the games do so well, but also hints at the exploitative nature that's these massive companies that existed pre-war, such as Vault Tech, with them literally selling death to the poor. Lucy wakes to Dr. Wilzig sharing a campfire with her, and he imparts some advice about the wasteland while the dog kills a radroach, an irradiated giant cockroach. There's a slight debate about how much FEV is to blame for the horrors of the wasteland and how much is down to just high levels of radiation and its sci-fi-esque kind of influence. Though I think it's become more clear that anything that is more horrific and less resembles its pre-war counterpart is down to FEV, and everything else is a bit more like natural radiation, as is the case with this radroach. The scientist leaves and Lucy heads on in her quest to find her father. We see this scientist set up near a dangerous cave surrounded by toxic waste, and he quickly thinks better of staying nearby when a hand is retrieved by his dog. This occurs just before Max and Knight Titus come across the same cave. On the journey there, Maximus tries to talk to this knight that he is squiring for, but the knight humiliates him, giving him his crotch to polish. Again, Maximus is being bullied by those more powerful than him. When they get to the cave, Maximus finds evidence of their target being there, but also the dangers. Knight Titus shows himself to be both scared, inept and a bully, as he puts Maximus into danger when they are attacked attacked by a mutated bear and continues to insult Maximus despite needing him to treat his wounds. We see the resourceful nature of Maximus, but also his unrelenting side as he allows Titus to die, believing him not to be worthy of the power armor suit. He then dons the suit himself, actively trying to be the hero he believes the knight should be, stopping a fight between two wastelanders in the desert. Lucy ends up in a trade hub called Philly, looking for any indications for her father. Philly is a place that has various buildings and stalls that have been created from the scavenged waste, reclaiming them in unique ways. This has occurred since the first Fallout, such as in Junktown, but they were more logical and they had less novelty in the way that they were used, and there was a higher degree of purpose-built housing. She comes across a woman selling Vault-Tec goods, thinking that they must have dealt with the raiders. Her insistence of the morality of the pre-war world and that these belong to Vault-Tec displays her naivety and her indoctrination to these virtues of these pre-war corporations. The curiosity of a Vault Dweller fades from the merchant when Lucy mentions the raider leader, Moldava. We can see that the people in Philly are trading in bottle caps. This is the default currency that is used mostly in Fallout, becoming a standard in places without a government to back any other currency. The town that Lucy is in, therefore, is very much likely not part of any centralized state, as more like the Wild West analogy we explored before. This is reinforced with the Western-style standoff we get between the ghoul and the townsfolk. He has come to claim the bounty for the scientist who just arrived before himself. The store owner has been given money by Moldava to get this scientist to her. Therefore, the store owner tells the town that anyone who kills the ghoul will get a cut of this profit. However, the ghoul has a remarkable sense of accuracy and a crazy ability to kill, subduing his opponents and blowing off the scientist's leg. This leads to the store owner to replace it with a prosthetic and ask Lucy to deliver him, as this will allow her to bargain for her father. Lucy is able to escape thanks to Maximus arriving in Philly and acting the hero. He fights with the ghoul, but his armor is damaged by the quick-thinking ghoul, and Maximus ends up comically flying away, crashing in the outskirts of the town. The dog is revived by the ghoul after he attacked her in the fight. Episode 2 ends with the scientist dying, intentionally ingesting the poison we saw before, telling Lucy that it's important to get his head to Moldava. Only the head, nothing else really matters, and that she should cut his head off to make it easier to transport it, giving her a ripper to cut it off. Back in the past, we get a lot of development of the themes that the TV series explores. It's not subtle, but it's not bad either. For example, Cooper rejects the changes in the script he is acting out, as his sheriff is killing the villain instead of imprisoning him. Even bad men are driven to do bad things. I'm not going to attempt the Spanish, but the line is, "He was ugly, strong, and had dignity," and that line straightforwardly parallels the ghoul that Cooper becomes. Again, the lawless Wild West theme is present, and there is reference to the communist influence within the film industry and then being rounded up. This is just like the real-life McCarthy trials of the 1950s, which terrorized many innocent people. Fallout presents this idyllic 50s American dream, but also plays on the areas that were not so great, though there isn't the exception that they don't really tackle racism. Back to the present, the ghoul is tracking Lucy. She notices the pulsating blue artifact in the Enclave scientist's head, and so she stuffs the tracker up his nose. This is very fortunate, as while at a lake, she is attacked by a mutated creature. Unlike the rad roaches and the radiated bear from earlier, this monster has many crazy mutations that suggests the influence of FEV. The feet of the monster look human-like, and it has an uncanny amount of human fingers inside its mouth. Lucy loses the head to the creature before being captured by the ghoul. Realizing she doesn't have the head anymore, he uses her as bait to lure out that gulping monstrosity. But in the scuffle, she throws the ghoul's bag of supplies. The ghoul, seeing that the vials of medicine that he'd been taking throughout the series smashed, restrains Lucy and takes her away from the lake, needing to take care of things first before retrieving the head. During this time, Maximus was also on Lucy's trail. When he crashed after the fight with the ghoul, he received a transmission from the Brotherhood and decided to lie to them, pretending that he is Titus and that Maximus instead had died. The Brotherhood asks him to return, but he refuses, saying he's completing his mission, so they decide to send a replacement squire to the fury of Maximus. With this anger, he pays for his broken armor to be fixed, only to return to bandits trying to scavenge it. He beats them up in a crude rage just in time for a vertibird to appear with a new squire, Thaddeus, Maximus's main bully from the base. Maximus uses this opportunity to seek revenge on Thaddeus, acting very similarly to Titus. At one point, he learns from Thaddeus that he's only bullied Maximus to stop other initiates beating on him. A clear cycle of violence is at play here, with those who are attacked hitting out at others using the power they have as a shield in which to hit out. This vicious cycle is not only shown clearly here, but also between the various factions of the Wasteland. The two bond over this honesty and Maximus's realization that Thaddeus is just another victim, all before reaching the lake themselves and being attacked by the same creature as Lucy and the ghoul. They save each other, with the creature being sick in the process. The dog licking the scientist's head alerts them to it, and they celebrate that they have obtained their target. The episode ends back in the past with Cooper doing a photo shoot for his wife Barb's company after her insistence on the matter, with Cooper giving a thumbs up in a vault suit, becoming the original Vault Boy. The vials that the ghoul has been coveting throughout the series were smashed towards the end of last episode, and we finally get some idea of what they are used for in this one. We also get our first look at a ghoul turning feral as its mind is deteriorating and he's slowly turning mad by his own radiation. The ghoul evidently knew Cooper and says that he was able to stave off the sickness for quite a while, but not as long as his counterpart. The reason given is that Cooper was able to earn enough caps to afford these vials that are used to stop this feralization process. This is quite a new development in the understanding of ghoulification in Fallout that hasn't been in any of the games so far. Cooper is clearly getting more sick and doesn't have any of this medicine to hand, and acquiring some now is his highest priority. Unfortunately for him, his friend doesn't have any of these medicine vials, and so he must look elsewhere. But before he does, Cooper of mice amends the other ghoul. The law of want not, waste not is key to this wasteland, and the ghoul starts to cannibalize his friend, arguing that it's a means of survival, and even gets Lucy to help him to store a packed lunch. Cannibalism is not new to Fallout, with the famous iguana bits being secretly human flesh in the original game. Originally, cannibalism was often hidden from others, but the state of nature led to the creation of many cannibal gangs that are more openly practicing the habit, and players have even been able to become cannibals themselves in Fallout New Vegas. There is another encounter with the pair that shows the importance of water in this world, how little there is around and what is there is not very safe. When the ghoul is asked by Lucy, "Who are you?" he replies, "I'm you, sweetie. You just have to give it a little time." This is a constant question that plagues us throughout the series. How did Cooper become the ghoul when they are vastly different people in terms of tone, ability, and morality? Does this mean that people like Lucy will inevitably be changed by this wasteland as well? It turns out that the ghoul is planning to sell Lucy in exchange for the medicine he needs. The place that is willing to make the trade is an organ harvesting facility that holds many people using a robot Mr. Handy to chop them up as and when their organs are needed. Many of these stored specimens are other ghouls, and some of them are feral. Lucy is able to take down the robot and uses it as a weapon to force her captors to set everyone free. Lucy, not knowing the dangers of feral ghouls, insists on them being set free too. The ferals overpower the slavers, killing them, and Lucy is also forced to kill the last one left, showing her the extreme actions that she needs to take in order to survive in this place. However, in defiance of this question over her inevitable change into another cynical, murderous person, she leaves Cooper, who had collapsed outside the facility, enough medicine to get back on his feet. Lucy's look now resembles the classic armoured vault dweller of Fallout 1. During this time, there's been a lot of action occurring within Vault 33. The Vault was able to imprison the remaining raiders that attacked them and are enthusiastically promoting the idea of their rehabilitation, but also show that they're quite ignorant to how they would accomplish this. Not everyone is on board though, especially Lucy's brother Norm, who argues they should be killed, much to the astonishment of the community. Betty, an older lady, calms the situation, but support from people like Steph, Lucy's pregnant friend who lost her husband in the fight, show that there are tensions within the vault. This situation is worsened by a classic Fallout problem. The water chip is broken and the vault is running out of water. We can see that water is a resource that scarcity often leads to conflict. Fallout 1 and 3 revolved around people's need for clean drinking water and how that affects the world. It's already being presented as a potential foreshadowing of the way Lucy could betray her morality when she drank from an irradiated puddle earlier. After hearing from the raiders that Vault 32 was already ruined when they arrived, Norm takes Chet to investigate the abandoned vault. Inside, he sees the raiders were telling the truth as the place is full of clear infighting, suicide, and brutal death. They see, "We know the truth," and "Death to management" written in blood along the walls, and "We know what's in there" on the intervault door to Vault 31. They come across the Overseer dead in his chair, tied in a Vault Boy thumbs up pose. Norm shows his scientific skills when he hacks into the terminal using the actual hacking mechanics from the later games, and learns that the raiders got into the vault using the Pip-Boy of Rose McClane, his and Lucy's mother. We get more questions about Vaults 31, 32 and 33 from Norm as he strives to learn about what led to the chaos, of Vault 32. An election is taking place for the new overseer of Vault 33 to replace Hank, and the 2 Vault members that are running for election are very enthusiastic, but Betty, the elder lady, wins an overwhelming majority. Many people refer to the slogan, "When things look glum, vote 31. That works to encourage people to think back to a more traditional candidate in uncertain times. Norm notices that every previous overseer, including his dad, has been from Vault 31, and there often is a troublesome issue at play during an election. He asks Steph, the only other Vault 31 resident, what was different about Vault 31. She replies that the mashed potato was better, the exact same thing as his dad would say. It's clear that Norm is inquisitive and suspicious about this going on, and it is insinuated that Betty is aware of this. Betty's first edict as the new overseer is to reopen Vault 32. Separating half of the residents is therefore very curious, and none of the incriminating and disturbing messages remain, but also Norm is being separated from Chet, who has become the surrogate father of Steph's child, and she has become the Vault 32 new overseer. What Norm lacked in strength was made up by Chet, who also then relied on Norm's curiosity to do the right thing. Their separation is definitely on purpose. The honeymoon between Maximus, posing as Titus, and Thaddeus comes to an abrupt end when Maximus finally reveals his identity. Thaddeus panics and the pair fight, with Maximus cracking Thaddeus' leg as he takes the power core from Maximus' armor, leaving him stuck, immobilized in place. Thaddeus flees with the head. After a while, rad roaches look to scurry inside Max's armor. Before any damage is made, Lucy appears, killing the bugs and frees Maximus from his armor. This isn't without a great deal of worry and trust issues though, as she is reticent to save someone who might just attack her. But this trust is necessary as she collapses soon after due to radiation poisoning. Maximus, who could have walked away, patches her back up with some Radaway, a medicine used in the series to remove radiation poisoning. Trust is a core theme of the episode and of the series as a whole. The freedom of the wild wasteland comes at the cost of having no institutions that you can trust. This means that the world is more dangerous and people are unable to live truly free as they always need to watch their back at every second. This concept is further explored as the pair cross a bridge, facing another pair of wanderers on the other side. The tension and lack in trust makes this normal situation extremely tense and difficult, with both pairs lying about having weapons. It ends with Lucy and Maximus being attacked by the pair, despite Lucy's best efforts. Lucy's longing for a world like her vault, where people lived without constant fear of death, is not unbelievable, and in fact there were places like that in California not too long ago, as we can see on this billboard that reveals the elephant, or should I say two-headed bear, in the room. Shady Sands, population 34,000, a modern city that existed in the post-war world, now a crater. This was a shock to many fans, especially of the earlier titles. Let me tell you a tale of the new Californian Republic. The TV series is set on the west coast of America, and that is significant for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it is the area of America that has been most covered in the games, and so has a plethora of factions, people, and events that influence the state of play in the TV series. The story of the East Coast is made up of a few games: the original Fallout, that I did a proper retrospective on, Fallout 2 and Fallout New Vegas, as well as some minor titles. The TV series sets the post-war story in 2096, 219 years after the nuclear hellfire. This is quite a long time after, but just 135 years after the first Fallout, and only 15 after our last look into the area in Fallout New Vegas. It has been surprising then that in this TV series we've only seen ruined wastes and new, never seen before towns like Philly. There should be so much more on this west coast. Only 15 years have passed since the events of New Vegas, and in that game we were told that the NCR still dominated this area, becoming the de facto government of Western North America, even stretching their influence as far as that Vegas area. The NCR wasn't a conquering faction in either, but a collection of states that banded together in California, and under this coalition, places like Shady Sands had grown from small depressing dwellings into something reminiscent of pre-war life. When we last saw the NCR in the games, we were at the frontier of their influence in Vegas. There is a degree of colonial expansion that is explored in New Vegas, with the NCR pushing outwards and forcing their rule of law on those who never really asked for it. They may have come across like a tired giant, pressing too far and bloated with bureaucratic corruption, but compared to the lawlessness of the wild and the ruthless nature of the alternative governments, it is to to be said that the NCR provided a fair amount of safety and stability to its inhabitants, at least those in its core territories, with the Californian cities becoming the envy of the post-nuke world. And so the fact that there's been little mention of this giant bear, of Shady Sands or the Hub or even New Reno was confusing to those who played these games. But there was a reason. They blew it up. Maximus said he was a child when the bombs fell. We just didn't realise it wasn't the same bombs that had fallen in 2077. His flashback does place him inside a fridge, an urban myth about the ability to survive nuclear devastation by being stuck inside one, and Fallout has actually played on that idea before. Everyone wants to save the world, they just disagree on how. That sentence echoes throughout the series, and we will return to it again. Maximus is still injured from the bridge altercation, and when they come across a medical facility, Lucy rushes in to find him aid, and he rushes in tow. The door to the medical supplies turns out to be fake, and Maximus falls as a trapdoor opens. Before we explore the pit that Maximus has fallen into, let's talk about the ghoul. Having come back to, with the help of the serum that stops him going feral, he explores the now deserted supermarket turned body harvesting facility. Inside, his relief of finding a large stockpile of this serum is only matched by his joy of finding even more drugs. As an avid Fallout player, the term drugs seem wrong, as chems has been the word and term used throughout the series to refer to anything drug related. This was because the idea of endorsing drug taking was seen as a big no-no for any game that wanted a worldwide publication, but in a way the term chems suits the upbeat, consumerist nature of the series, and I was surprised to see them not referred to as chems by the character. I assume this is because if you haven't played the games, you instantly understand that what people are taking are much more recreational in their use than chems may suggest. Back to Lucy and Maximus, the pair had fallen into a trap, but luckily for them, it wasn't as nefarious as it could be. The fall led them to another vault, Vault 4 in particular, and while they've been held in the short term, they've also been patched up. They're even free to leave as the Vault 4 dwellers trust that they are no danger. While they wait, Lucy asks if Maximus wants to have sex, showing a bit of her quirky, upfront optimism that her upbringing has delivered her. But Maximus's reaction is more childish, as we learn he knows nothing of sex and relations, not realising that erections are normal and even what they're really for. I think this reinforces the cult-like nature that both the characters had grown up within. With the growing mystery of Vault 33 and Maximus's hesitance of the friendly, trusting nature of the people in Vault 4, there is certainly a degree of suspense about the place that is denied by Lucy. That is until she notices the many mutated humans inside, including the Overseer who has only one eye. In fact, he tells Lucy that the odd mutated people are those that were originally from the vault, and that the rest are refugees from Shady Sands. Lucy is surprised that his vault had opened up for the wider world, as she was taught that the vaults would open and then help repopulate and civilize the world in the far future. When she sees the history of the NCR being taught in the vault classroom, she realizes that the world didn't wait around and that her purpose was somewhat of a lie. To get a bit of the understanding of the people of Shady Sands, she participates in a tradition of those from Shady Sands, though this gets increasingly weird as they smear the ashes of their loved ones on each other while naked, and then a flag is raised of the Flame Mother, who they will believe will bring them justice to the wastes. The Flame Mother picture is that of Moldava, the raider leader who attacked Lucy's vault. In panic and worry, Lucy goes to investigate level 12, a place she was strictly told not to go to.
To everyone who does not wish to die a most painful death.
In there she sees horrific mutants, including one similar to those who attacked her in the lake, a video of a pregnant woman spawning these monsters before being devoured by them, and many more pods of pregnant sleeping women. She gets into a fight with an emerging scientist, but is overcome by the Vault 4 security. "You're all crazy." The woman responds that she'd probably think the same if they went to Lucy's home. This points our attention to the Vault 33 and its sister vaults, and makes us think about what is hiding there, especially when we are shown in the next episode the history of Vault 4, a vault where cross-species experiments were taken out on the unknowing population. That was until their scientific overlords were overcome and killed by the experiments, and that mutated population was able to free themselves. The place is now a peaceful one that takes in refugees while they try and ease the pain of those who still suffer from the experiments. This misunderstanding leads to Lucy being banished, but she asks for Maximus to be able to stay, as he is starting to enjoy a life without the constant fear of danger. And luckily for him, he sees Lucy being dragged away and assumes the worst, stealing a power core for his armor and fighting his way out. No one is harmed beyond repair, and the power core is returned, but the pair must leave. This technically wasn't the first time we saw Vault 4 though, as we come across it in the past, with Cooper as a Vault Tech representative doing an infomercial about this vault, with some scientists that we know would go on to do great evil. We learn that Cooper is not as entangled with the idea of Vault Tech despite being their poster boy. His friends mostly think he is a sellout, but the only reason he is doing this is for the insistence of his wife. She works for the company and is very much pushing him to fully embrace Vault Tech, especially for their daughter. This starts a tug of war between Cooper's values of family life, freedom, and also solidarity with his fellow man. We've heard that Cooper fought in the war against China and that he does not want the people who he fought alongside to have died in vain, going as far to chastise his wife's colleague after learning that he helped design the power armor that had his fellow soldiers killed by having this weird fault. But there are also many little niggles, such as Barb, his wife, dismissing his ideas of leaving the city and buying a ranch, the fact that dogs won't be allowed in the vaults, and the statement that they need to be in one of the good vaults. It only takes a fellow actor to point out that a company selling the end of the world has a stake in its demise for him to agree to go on to an anti-Vault Tech meeting. The woman leading the meeting happens to be Lee Moldova, looking only slightly younger than the wasteland leader we see in the future. Leaving that mystery aside, she gives a talk about how the big corporations like Vault Tech and Robco have overwhelming influence in the US and beyond, and that they are the real enemy. This hits Cooper hard due to his service history, and he gets into an argument with this young Moldova, who goes by Miss Williams. She assures him that it isn't the servicemen that she is against, that they are victims, but she's not a communist just because she doesn't buy into the big corp's propaganda. But the thing that makes Cooper really take note is when she asks him about his wife Barb, because she knows a very different side to her. Speaking with Cooper alone, Miss Williams tells him how she was on the cusp of making cold fusion a reality, a breakthrough that would likely end the war with China because that was fought over resources. However, her science division was also required by Vault Tech, specifically Barb Cooper's wife, but they stopped all progress and adoption of the technology. Cooper, having met Moldova in the past, seems to be on the hunt for her in the present. This is only after dealing with the self-proclaimed government that functions simply as a protection racket. Seeing Moldova's wanted poster, the ghoul remarks that she had changed a lot since he knew her. The ghoul's ruthlessness is reinforced as he kills a boy and threatens their family for information of Moldova's whereabouts, learning that she is holed up at Griffith Observatory. The scientist's head that contains the mysterious invention is with Thaddeus and his mangled foot. He plans to meet up back with the Brotherhood, but is losing faith in being able to contact them until he's sold a mysterious vial that instantly heals his foot from this reoccurring swindler. Not thinking about the possible side effects, he trudges towards a radio station to contact the Brotherhood. He is able to do so dodging an assortment of traps surrounding the station. When Lucy and Maximus follow the track to the station, Thaddeus shoots at them, missing before setting off a trap that would usually kill a person, but Thaddeus is somehow left alive. The serum he ingested is obviously being more effective than expected to the point of panic. It is thought that the serum must be turning him into a ghoul, with the three of them being able to talk it through in the confusion. Most ghouls that we know in the series have changed due to being exposed to high levels of radiation. A drug that can ghoulify someone is somewhat new, with Hancock in Fallout 4 being the only ghoul I can think of that turned into a ghoul in this particular way. While this has kept Thaddeus alive, the Brotherhood in its current makeup is very intolerant of ghouls and would likely kill Thaddeus, seeing him as a lesser creature, even if he supplied them with their head. Thaddeus then flees with Maximus and Lucy agreeing to cover for him and let him get to safety. Maximus himself has shifted his belief of the Brotherhood and allows Lucy to take the Doctor's head while using a decoy one to placate the Brotherhood. They agree to meet at Vault 33 and they kiss. Philly has been occupied by Brotherhood forces and Maximus is under investigation for crimes against the institution. He's going to be killed for the death of Knight Titus, allowing the target to escape and mutilating his friend's foot. Dane, the very same friend, admits that actually she was the one who cut her foot in cowardice, giving the Elder Quintus pause for thought. Maximus discusses with the Elder in private, and Maximus explains that he knows where the artifact is, and that Knight Titus died as a coward. This resonates with the Elder, who feels that the Brotherhood has lost its way, and that power is for the taking, something he believes that Maximus has embodied, and hopes that the pair can reshape the Brotherhood if they recover this artifact. Lucy reaches the observatory that has become a small settlement full of refugees from the shattered North Californian Republic. They have a banner on display that shows that the group believes themselves to be the continuation of this group. The group is diverse and more communal than most that we've seen, and we even see a ghoul that Lucy rescued from the organ farm in the background. It seems very far from the intense brutish raiders that attacked Vault 33, but inside the planetarium is the same Moldova that we saw in the vault and pre-war. She still has a menacing presence, being along alongside a very deteriorated feral ghoul. Lucy's father is still alive, though he's locked in a cage, and Lucy sets out on an exchange for his freedom. Here, Lucy is rejecting the cycle of violence that has left the wasteland so hostile, and asks simply for her dad in exchange for this artifact. But Moldava gives her more than she asks for, giving her a history lesson about her family and the vaults. Hank isn't a vault-born dweller like Lucy. He was born before the war and was frozen in cryosleep. Vault 31 is actually full of Vault Tech executives that survived the war and would time after time take control as overseers of the other two connected vaults, establishing a de facto dictatorship to shape a community as they planned, over hundreds of years. We see Lucy's brother get first-hand experience of this as he tricks himself into Vault 31 and sees his dad's empty chamber. Vault Tech is evil. Many of the vaults were planned out as scientific experiments, some with direct control from employees such as Vault 4, but others simply were left to fester in horrendous conditions as the dwellers were used as guinea pigs. We have known this since Fallout 2, but we had not seen behind the scenes of Vault Tech as we will now see with Cooper. The last scene of the past has Cooper at Vault Tech HQ listening in on his wife, still worried about the goings on, and his fears come true as during a meeting between all the big corporations of the US such as Westech, Robco and Vault Tech itself, Barb suggests that not only do they cut these companies in with their own vaults, but also encourages them to experiment with those in their care. She admits that they should force the end of the world too, because war never changes. Only time can truly make change. War never changes is a line that defines Fallout. The constant fight for survival and tug of war over control and resources is something you explore in every entry, even if the resources fail. While many parts of this scene can be a bit annoying and a bit on the nose for Fallout fanatics, I think that this ending motif really does actually hit home. It understands what Fallout is about. It allows that to play out in the series, but also turns it on its head. As we can see, the plan to control and manipulate people's culture and genetics was the plan of Vault Tech from the beginning, with Vaults 31, 32 and 33 being the logical endpoint of this for Vault Tech itself. As Cooper struggles to come to terms with what he has heard, a young Betty introduces him to a superfan of his films, Hank McClane. Inside his present-day prison, he pleads for Lucy not to listen to Moldava as she tells her about how Lucy's mother, Rose, had worked out that civilization had returned to the surface and how Hank had tried to stop her investigating. Rose stubbornly escaped the vault, found Shady Sands, and stayed there with her young children. That was until they were taken back by Hank back to Vault 33 as he set off a nuclear bomb that destroyed the once prosperous city, that turned Rose into the feral ghoul that we see sitting at that table. In all her tears, Lucy makes her dad give the Vault Tech admin codes needed to allow Moldava to use the artifact to run a reactor. Cold fusion has been mentioned in Fallout before, but its inclusion is very sparse. A cold fusion power generator was said to be included in every Garden of Eden creation kit, or GEC as they're called. These special kits were then given to chosen vaults for the use of revitalizing and populating the Earth after the apocalypse. These kits have been found and used in the Fallout canon, though their true contents remained a bit of a mystery to most. In fact, the whole idea of these kits became almost religious, that the GEC could be a holy artifact of great power, but really these have been used to bring fertility and life to an area through unknown means. Shady Sands, Vault City and Arroyo were vitalized by a GEC being used. Project Purity in Fallout 3 required a GEC to be able to create a giant water purifying pumping station. It is not implausible that cold fusion generators were actually included in these kits, with Vault Tech supplying the technology for after the bombs instead of adopting them beforehand and stopping the bombs altogether. However, we know that the process was also developed by a post-war scientist of the Enclave in the series. This scientific breakthrough could be independent of pre-war development. It could also be the case that the scientist was using a GEC technology as a basis to rediscover it, or it could be that the GECs never actually contained cold fusion power to begin with, and this only occurred later with the scientist working with Moldava. What makes me think that GECs could somewhat be important though is due to the way that the Brotherhood elder Quintus mentioned earlier that he wanted to create Eden with the artifact, wanting to create his own perfect society. This religious-like drive for a utopia is fitting for Fallout as a whole, and it also reiterates that line that Maximus said next to the ruins of Shady Sands, how everyone wants to save the world, they just disagree on how. We can see this play out as the observatory is attacked by the Brotherhood, with Maximus slipping through the carnage. Despite their heavy weapon advantage, the Brotherhood is inflicted with great losses by the small settlement, and only a small group ends up reaching the interior of the observatory. Most of them don't get very far though, as the ghoul appears, and quickly makes light of work of the soldiers, using the knowledge from pre-war about the weak spots in that model of power armor. Maximus alone reaches Lucy and frees Hank, not realizing him to be the monster that Lucy now knows him to be. While Lucy and Maximus talk, Hank gets into a set of power armor and knocks Maximus out, but Lucy refuses to go with Hank, pulling a gun on her father. Instead, it is the ghoul who fires at Hank, but only grazes him as he demands to know where his wife and child are. But Hank flees. It turns out the ghoul had actually predicted this and planned for it and bugged him with a tracker. He knew that Hank wouldn't say a word about those he answers to, but he would run back to them and suggests that he, Lucy, and Dogmeat follow, as they have questions that need answers. Lucy is reluctant to leave Maximus, but knows that she must, as the Brotherhood reinforcements are coming and they are not the saviors that she hoped they'd be. She shoots her mother, putting her out of her misery. Shortly after Maximus awakes, seeing a mortally wounded Moldava setting the cold fusion reactor off and powering the city that once was Los Angeles. She gently warns Maximus of the power that the Brotherhood now holds before dying. While Maximus stays in shock, the remnants of the Brotherhood arrive to greet him, thinking him a hero for killing Moldava, and is cheered for the victory. The last thing we see is Hank, in his stolen power armor, heading towards a familiar site, the Lucky 38 Casino in New Vegas. New Vegas is a location in the wasteland that we explore in the game named after it. This took place 15 years before the events of the show, prior to the fall of the NCR. The city itself was powered and policed by robots. These robots were controlled secretly by a near mummified Robert House, one of the people we saw in the Vault-Tec meeting. From an incubated life support system, he reformed the ruins of Vegas and made it into a bustling city, reminiscent of its previous self. However, he sought to project his power further, and during the events of the game, he tasks you with restoring the connection with his more advanced and bountiful robot army that he has kept hidden away in a secret vault. You can choose to do this for him, or you can take that power for yourself and kill Mr. House. There are two other options though, and that is to help the two other factions that are fighting over this part of the wasteland. That being the NCR, or Kaisar's Legion, a collection of enslaving tribes united under a powerful leader that named himself Kaiser. The NCR wanted to establish this area of control somewhat out of an expansionist tendency, but also due to the strategic advantage of holding the Hoover Dam. Again, the ability to generate power is highly significant and often a catalyst for conflict. The NCR had fought with this legion before and even won a Pyrrhic victory of the first battle of Hoover Dam, but the second battle for the dam occurs as the finale of the game, with the protagonist determining its outcome. The state of this area that will be seen in the new series is somewhat in flux, as there's no determined canon. Fallout games are known for how they allow the player to make choices, and that can often be quite controversial when the timeline moves forward and has to establish an in-series outcome for the previous games. What we do know is that the NCR survived the war with the Legion, but the destruction of Shady Sands occurred only shortly after, as Maximus was only young when the bomb detonated. The NCR could have lost that battle but retreated, but we've not heard of anything of the Legion, so it's unlikely that they were the winners of this battle. It is made quite clear that both groups were at their furthest reaches of their empires, and that winning a fight wasn't as hard as establishing control over the fought-over area, especially with other forces in the area, such as Mr. House, and if we take this series on face value, then likely Vault-Tec or the Enclave. The city of New Vegas itself had shielded itself from conflicts, becoming an oasis for the rich. It revelled in the stiff stalemate, and it stopped the NCR from asserting power over the city, and instead had to play by Mr. House's rules. But they also had no interest in sacking the city like Kaiser likely would. While the chaos of the NCR's downfall wouldn't have badly impacted the New Vegas Strip, those who lived on the outskirts, the poor and downtrodden of the area, would have had to live in a much more dangerous world. That gives you a bit of relevant history to the area that will be explored next season, but there are other things that may be worth noting before the end of this video. Firstly, there was another very isolated Brotherhood chapter that laid secure in a vault near New Vegas, and we do not know their outcome and their relationship with Maximus's Brotherhood. There is also a town composed purely of super mutants nearby that were on the whole friendly to the outside world. We have not seen a super mutant in the show yet, but it would be interesting if we get the crazed cannibalistic mutants or those intelligent super mutants of earlier games, or likely a mix of both. It should be noted that while Shady Sands was the capital of the NCR, it was not its only major city. Cities like the Hub, the Boneyard, Necropolis all haven't been mentioned and may have some remnants still existing. The Boneyard was located in the ruins of Los Angeles and would have been powered by the cold fusion reactor in that last episode. Whether these other cities exist is hard to know, but we hear no mention of them. The last thing I'm going to do before this video ends is give you a brief summary of questions that we would hope the second series will tackle, and maybe that you should keep in your head while you're watching it. What happened to Cooper's family, and how did he turn into a ghoul? Where is Hank going, and who is there? Was that meeting the forming of the Enclave or something altogether different? What will the Brotherhood do following its victory? How did Moldava survive until the present day? Why did they call her the Flame Mother? What will happen to Norm while he's trapped inside Vault 31, and what will happen following the resettlement of Vault 32? I have some theories, but I resist the urge to watch the trailers, so they may be already defunct, but I'm going to give you a little snippet of some of them. I think that Cooper is no ordinary ghoul. He passed out instead of going crazy when he ran out of serum. He looked more slicker than the other ghouls, and his remarkable ability as a gunslinger all point me towards maybe some FEV involvement, but again, this could be more simply resolved. There is a possibility that Moldava has some form of reincarnation and may not actually be dead. The rebirth and phoenix-like metaphors of her make me wonder if there's something more to her, and we have seen people recover from worse in the series. I have more long-winding and wilder theories, but I'm interested in hearing yours. Please share them in the comments. Otherwise, I hope this was a useful video and hope you have a good one enjoying Series 2.